On November 19, Ukraine launched a series of missile assaults on Russia to commemorate the war's 1000th anniversary. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has delivered a clear message to Russia that they have now gotten what they wanted and are not scared to fire long-range missiles. The initial blow is just the beginning, as Ukraine intends to transform several of Russia's most key strategic positions into ground fire pits. Against November 18, US President Joe Biden finally approved Ukraine to employ long-range missiles against Russian territory. The missiles are an obvious danger to Putin's plans for Ukraine. Assuming Ukraine has obtained the current Block 1A model of the missile system, it has the ability to hit up to 186 miles within Russian territory. Each strike may be equipped with a high explosive or blast fragmentation warhead, which can split into 950 submunitions and travel at velocities more than Mach 3i in the air. For Russia, the missiles are road mobile, which means Ukraine may travel them to any location on its territory before shooting them at their target. On November 19, the first of several exhibitions of the attack's destructive force was launched. The BBC verified that Ukraine started an offensive inside the Bryansk area, which borders Ukraine to the north. This location is most likely part of a supply route that supplies weaponry to Russian President Vladimir Putin's 50,000 troops in his current KK counteroffensive. The specific objective of the strike was unclear at first on the BBC, but Russia's defense reported that Ukraine had launched 5 assaults, 4 of which were shot down before reaching their targets. According to Russia, the missile that made it through did not strike directly, but parts from the missile started a fire at a military site. Ukraine's strategy is clear. It sends drones with its missiles to confuse Russia's anti-aircraft defenses, making them to concentrate on less threatening unmanned aerial vehicles ahead of the big missiles aimed at Bryansk. The 1000-day anniversary of Ukraine's assault on Russia has resulted in a substantial shift in the character of the conflict, as well as a possible escalation by both sides. The attack was carried out on a plant in the Bryansk area, which was effectively destroyed. This suggests that the strike was significantly more harmful than a few missile pieces starting flames. Ukraine was able to destroy an ammunition dump that included vital weaponry as artillery ammunition, air-to-ground and anti-aircraft missiles, and a plethora of ammo used by Russia's multiple launch rocket systems. These weapons are neither permitted for Russia to attack Ukraine on its own territory from the presumed protection of Bryansk, nor can they be transferred to back Putin's counteroffensive against Ukrainian soldiers positioned in the area. The decision by Biden to allow the attack's use, after escalating the Ukraine conflict to directly engage other countries prior to the 1000-day anniversary assault, is alarming for Ukraine. Putin's rhetoric erupted as soon as the Kremlin learnt that Ukraine may utilize long-range missiles on its territory. Dmitry Peskov, Putin's spokesperson, asserted that it was apparent that the departing administration in Washington plans to continue adding gasoline to the fire and inflaming tensions around the war. Russia's foreign ministry followed up, alleging that any deployment of US-provided strikes on Russian territory would be proof of America's direct engagement in hostilities against the Russian Federation. These remarks paved the way for Vladimir Putin's decision to make changes to Russia's nuclear program. To summarize, Ukraine's 1000-day anniversary strike on Russia represents both a shift in the character of the conflict and the possibility of escalation on both sides. The doctrine, initially suggested in September 2024, was amended only hours before Ukraine started its 1000th day invasion on Bryansk. This amendment establishes new circumstances under which Russia may fire nuclear weapons against an adversary. The policy currently specifies that any strike carried out by a non-nuclear state supported by a nuclear state would be deemed a combined assault on Russia, exposing them to a nuclear response from Russia. This is a significant departure from Russia's prior policy, which declared that the country may use nuclear weapons if an adversary launched a nuclear strike on its territory or attacked with conventional weapons that threatened the Russian Federation's survival. The US State Department's decision has not surprised the Kremlin, which sees it as another effort by Putin to compel and frighten Ukraine and other nations across the globe via reckless nuclear language. Washington has no intention of changing its own nuclear doctrine, which still views nuclear weapons as a response to a nuclear strike on American territory. However, Ukraine's assault on Bryansk is entirely consistent with the new Russian doctrine, and according to Putin's updated interpretation of the rules, Russia will be free to react using nuclear weapons. The Kremlin has said that Ukraine's attack is a new phase of the Western war, which takes us to the question of what the future holds for the Ukraine conflict. Ukraine's strike on Bryansk demonstrates that there are no constraints on where or how it might launch attacks against Russian territory. Russia must now cope with Ukraine, which is capable of destroying major airfields and significantly limiting Putin's use of glide bombs. This minimizes Putin's deployment of glide bombs and relieves strain on its ground troops, notably in the base area, which has been a major priority for Putin during 2024. Ukraine can now attack considerably more Russian targets than previously, which alarms Putin. Attacks level the playing field in terms of reaction power. So far, Russia has employed missiles and explosives to strike Ukrainian territory without regard for domestic repercussions. Russia took advantage of this fact right up to Ukraine's Bryansk's first attack, which killed 12. The continuing confrontation between Ukraine and Russia has resulted in a number of strikes, including the killing of one youngster in a strike using an Iranian-made Shahed drone. On November 18, Russia launched a missile into Odessa, resulting in an apartment fire that killed at least 10 people and wounded 43 more. The day before, it launched a cluster munitions-laden ballistic missile against Sumy, killing 11 and injuring 84. This has resulted in Russia's duplicity, since Ukraine is repeatedly advised not to assault its own territory with weaponry supplied by international allies. Ukraine now has additional alternatives to fight these strikes on its soil, which pose a clear danger to any Russian population or stronghold within 180 miles of the Ukrainian border. This gives Ukraine leverage, since it conquered around 460 square kilometers of Russian territory in August 2024. If Ukraine and Russia ever sit down to negotiate, Ukraine's ability to launch assaults within Russia and demonstrate its readiness to do so gives it even more power. The nation may now claim that it is fully capable of retaliating in kind to Russian attacks on its territory, and that its missiles can reach far enough to harm major infrastructure and military targets inside Russia. However, retaining this influence requires Ukraine to preserve its capacity to launch assaults in Russia. There is no certainty that this will occur when Donald Trump takes over as President of the United States in January 2025. Mike Waltz, Trump's national security advisor, has criticized Biden's move, characterizing it as another step up the escalation ladder. This might be harmful to Ukraine by enabling it to use assault strikes as leverage against Russia. Russia has also agreed to take nuclear strikes in reaction to Ukraine and its allies breaking red lines in the conflict. Russia's nuclear doctrine has shifted on the 10,000-day anniversary of the Bryansk attack, signaling a watershed moment in the conflict for all sides. The issue is whether this turning moment favors Ukraine or Russia.